Well, hello, everyone, and welcome. You're tuning in to our live stream about postpartum mental health. I'm going to just take a moment as we let people get comfortable. And I'll start off with a big old welcome for you. Welcome to our live stream, Supporting New Parents, a conversation about postpartum mental health. I'm Susan Weinstein. I'm co-executive director at Families for Depression Awareness. We really appreciate you joining us for this panel discussion. And I really hope that you'll share your thoughts and your questions in the comments on either Facebook, which we're Family Aware, or on YouTube, where we are FFDA and the number 1. And keep an eye on the comments for thoughts from other viewers. And also we'll be sharing some links to resources that could be of interest to you. FFDA staff will be monitoring the comments on both Facebook and YouTube. All righty. Today, we will have a brief introduction to Families for Depression Awareness, and then we'll go right to the discussion with our featured presenters. The platform that we're using allows us to post comments and questions as we go through our planned questions. So please feel free to do comments all the way through. If we don't get to your question while we're doing the panel discussion, we do have some time set aside at the end for us to go ahead and circle back through questions we might have missed. And then when we finish that, we will ask you, this is just an advance ask, to complete our survey and give us feedback on the program. We depend on your input to help us improve our programs. And the thing that really, really helps us is that we want to know what topics of our interest to you, and we can plan our programs accordingly. So we value your input and we appreciate your time letting us know. So Families for Depression Awareness is a national nonprofit based in Massachusetts. We help families recognize and cope with depression and bipolar disorder to get people well and prevent suicides. That's our mission. We believe that family caregivers play essential roles in helping their loved ones along the path to mental wellness. Our educational programs, information, and actionable advice help you to be an effective support for those you care for and about. And when we say family caregiver, we're not limiting it to blood relatives or anything like that. We're just really looking for people who have a vested interest in someone else, that they would like to support them in getting well. So if you're a friend, if you're a neighbor, whatever your relationship is to someone that you have concerns about, you can be their caregiver if they will allow you. But we have information for caregivers all through the website. Let's see. Oh, so we also believe that when one person in the family has depression or bipolar disorder, it can really impact the whole family. We've seen this, that one person's mental health condition affects other people, in everyday life through genetics, through logistics, through moods, just all kinds of ways. So it's important to us as an organization to equip families so that they feel ready to identify the needs that each person has and find ways to address them, because we want the whole family to work toward finding mental wellness. You may have already been at our website, familyaware.org. It's rich with caregiver-focused resources. Since our founding in 2001, we've really believed in the power of storytelling to put a face to depression and reduce the stigma that just so often inhibits people from seeking help. On the website, you can learn from our interviews with mental health professionals. You can be motivated by our tools and our tests, educated by webinars and articles, and inspired by the people who've shared their stories. They provide lessons learned, and we also find that it helps reduce the feeling that so many caregivers have of being alone in this situation. You'll find that yours is not a unique situation, most likely, and hopefully you can draw some strength from that. While we're talking about the website, just know that we have a lot of webinars, but coming up on September 10th, which is World Suicide Prevention Day, we're going to be having another live stream, and that one will be Nurturing Hope, Supporting Loved Ones Who Have Suicidal Thoughts. We've had a lot of questions over time about passive suicidal thinking, and we thought it was time for us to get some experts in to talk about what that means and what that means for caregivers and how they can be supportive. And of course, we'd love to thank you. We're recording this session so that you can share it with others on Facebook and YouTube. We, of course, want to thank our panelists for participating and sharing their knowledge and experience. We'd also like to thank Sage Therapeutics and Biogen for supporting this program. And thank you for attending. Let me introduce you to our presenters. Shamika Tumlin is passionate about creating change within communities of color, aiding in increasing access to quality care services within the mental and behavioral health fields, and by sharing her own story, ensuring that no one feels alone on their healing journey. Shamika is a public health professional and a licensed marriage and family therapist. Her work centers on birthing communities. Her work within mental health, child health on the local level led to her pursuing becoming a full spectrum doula and advocating nationally for maternal health. As a Black woman navigating the healthcare system, she has firsthand experience with both biases and racism. Those and other life experiences resulted in her creating Positively Meek, that's Positively MYEEK, a platform for sharing resources, providing education about mental and reproductive health, and opening up about her own life experiences. Hi, Shamika. I'd also like to bring on Wendy Lias, a therapist at the Postpartum Stress Center. She's dedicated to making the journey into parenthood less solitary. I'm definitely getting a theme here about the dealing with people's feeling alone. Wendy holds a graduate degree in social work from Case Western Reserve University. Firmly believing that learning does not culminate in graduation, Wendy's postgraduate training includes perinatal and postpartum distress, substance use disorders, and several evidence-based therapeutic treatments. She's a certified compassionate bereavement care provider. She's worked with people of all ages in a myriad of settings, ranging from inpatient care to community-based crisis response. Wendy offers a safe and non-judgmental space for her clients to heal through therapy. Thank you all so much for being here. I'm going to stop sharing the slides somehow. Thank you. Also like to give a shout out to the FFDA staff supporting this program. Let's see what we got here. We put together some questions beforehand. We're going to be monitoring the comments on both Facebook and YouTube for your input. And let's just get the ball rolling here. All right. So Shamika, I wonder if you can help people by explaining what are some common signs of postpartum depression that caregivers and family members should be aware of. And how will they distinguish between symptoms of postpartum depression and, what everybody says, oh, you're a new parent, that's usual, that's normal. So how can you help them distinguish this?
Sure. So first, I would like to say, as far as the comment of you're a new parent, this is normal. Baby blues last no longer than 2 weeks. So anything lasting longer than 2 weeks is a key that maybe something else may be at play. Not always that there's a problem, and I want to make that clear. You are not depression, you are not anxiety, or whatever it is that you may have. It is indeed something that you are experiencing, and there are individuals who can provide tools, resources, and help you navigate that season of life. Also, they're accompanied with things such as high irritability. We talk about, during the newborn period, there's so much happening. adjusting schedules, maybe even adjusting what life is like, going from whatever your original family size was to now having a new addition, learning each other. As couples with a new baby, you're learning about yourselves all over again, also learning some new strengths and weaknesses that you may not have known existed. You're also learning about other family members as they come into the picture and want to help or be present during that time. So, high irritability in the sense that, yes, for those changes, they may cause anxiousness and even some withdrawal. Like maybe you're a person who's like, I'm an introvert. This is way too much attention. I just want to go find, a cave. Being an introvert myself, I totally understand that. But this is when it seems like everything everybody does makes you irritated. Like I've worked with clients before and I hear a lot of, I don't know, like I can't explain it. Like everybody just makes me mad. And I'm like, well, okay, let's get into that. Let's talk a little bit more about that. Also, even some common depression symptoms, lack of motivation. You may find that things that once brought you joy no longer bring you joy. Part of that being you may not even have time to do them. Also, there's a I want to also debunk the myth that when you become a parent, the light switch just comes on. Like at the birth of the baby, all of a sudden you're like, I'm ready to go. That is not true. If you experience that, I am so happy for you, but that is not technically how that works. So for some individuals, they can experience signs of depression immediately after birth. Some people experience it even prior to birth. And then for others, it's typically at that point when people start to leave and your help starts to like, because everyone wants to be there at the birth of the baby. Like, okay, what can I bring by? What food can I bring? And then you start to notice when that help starts to leave, what is it that my capacity is saying that I can show up for? And I don't want to say it all because I know Wendy has some things to add. So that'll be my takeaways from that.
Sure, thank you, Wendy. What do you think? And what are some of the like specific things that are common signs that people just it might set off a little more.
Yeah, I really want to. Sorry, I really want to echo what Shamika just said, that depression doesn't always look like what we classically think of as a depressed mood when you're dealing with a postpartum person. It can appear like a very agitated depression. These are often not people who are confined to their beds and doing nothing. They're often very, very busy and on their feet for large portions of the day. And so not being sort of fooled by the illusion that if a newly postpartum person is up and doing things and highly functional in presentation, that they're not struggling with mood and anxiety.
One of the words that comes to mind for me when I think of new parenthood, having been there myself, is the sense of overwhelm. And I'm sure that there are people who can see that, their daughter-in-law or their friend or whoever it is just seeming completely overwhelmed. What should a person do if they have concerns about someone that they think might be experiencing postpartum depression? Oh, I'm sorry. Shamika, you want to jump in on that?
Sure. I was going to let Wendy go first. Well, Wendy, did you want to take it? I saw your hand come up. Okay. I think something to remember is you don't always have to have a solution. So I think sometimes this idea that we have to know what to do can also cause like our, fight, flight, or fright to come up. And a lot of us may faint or freeze. And so the understanding that if you are noticing something is changing about, someone that you care about, you love, partner, daughter, whoever that individual may be, being willing to actually ask questions, but also just say honestly what you're seeing. And the response may not be the best that you receive, but I think you also have to be willing to identify what you're seeing and have that conversation from a place of love, and know that at least I've said it, so that when they are ready to talk about it, they know that I'm someone they can come and talk to, and I'm not coming from a judgmental space, but one of which I really want to show up for you. How can I do that? Also offering things. So sometimes if I am a person that's practicing saying I need help, I may can tell you, yes, I need help, but I may not know what comes next. So being willing to know, for instance, if they're a new parent, if you know how to cook, maybe offering to cook a meal and bring it over. If you're like me and that may not be your strong suit, we have DoorDash and all kind of like online email, food cards, so that you can give them maybe like a gift card to their favorite restaurant. Depending on your closeness to the family, as well as what phase, or I should say like where they are in their postpartum journey, maybe it's offering to be a babysitter for the night. And maybe they're not leaving the house, they're just going to bed. Or maybe they're getting a chance to reconnect with their spouse or watch a favorite TV show. Just the opportunity to be themselves and know that whatever it is that they need taken care of, the baby or maybe it's the older siblings, that they're taken care of and in the company of someone safe and supportive, so that they can actually take a load off mentally and physically. As I think friends, one of the things that we can do in that situation is remembering that just because you had a baby, they didn't like become a totally new person. They did, but not in the sense that you all can no longer still talk. So even being willing to maybe have an area of their life that doesn't change so much, so still continuing to send the group text, still, inviting them out, even if they can't come, and switching that up. Okay, they're not going to come to brunch. Bring brunch to them. Tell them, hey, just you don't even have to get dressed up. We're coming over. We're going to cook, put the food out, stay as long as you want. We'll stay as long as you want us to stay. So being able to provide a sense of stability, especially in a time where a lot has changed and an individual is trying to adjust to those changes.
Yeah, Valerie commented right along that new parenthood is already such a chaotic time. It's hard as a mom to focus on yourself. And I think your advice about helping the mom to do that, by making things easier, where they could just turn around and there it is. I think that's awesome. Wendy, was there, for people who are concerned about someone with depression, the thing that we usually say is to use kind of like, I've noticed that, I've noticed that you seem really on edge, or I've noticed that there doesn't seem to be anything that's bringing you joy right now. Like those are some kinds of things. Wendy, are those the kinds of things that you would also say to a new mom?
I really like that language because it's not as threatening, I think, as throwing around like diagnostic jargon, like, "Ooh, you seem very depressed. This might be, postpartum depression." And I also think that it puts the focus a little bit on the observer and says, this may not be true. This is just what I'm seeing when I'm with you. And as someone who cares about you, I want to name it and bring it to the surface, which is such an important thing to do, because oftentimes I think we're afraid that if we say something out loud, that will make it real. It's already real. I think loved ones and caregivers don't need to shy away as much from making these things explicit and just saying, here's what I'm observing.
And I would like to clarify also, I was mentioning sort of people outside the home, but certainly one's partner or spouse can be in the position of noticing things and might have the unique perspective of being in the same boat, but feeling something very different about it. And it seems to me that that's something that they could also share without being like, I'm doing better than you are. That would not be the best approach, I'm guessing. So Wendy, a new baby, affects everything about someone's life. Um, but what are the ways that having a new baby impacts the mental health of new parents?
So, one thing that I often say to new parents when I'm meeting with them is that the birth or the arrival of even a very wanted child is actually a life crisis. It is a point of inflection where everything in your life really starts to change and is turned upside down. And so, even though it's this wonderful, beautiful thing when it's a wanted arrival, it's also highly chaotic and disruptive. But one thing we know is that statistically, relationship satisfaction tanks in the first year after the arrival of a new baby. And I actually like to normalize that with people. Like, that's right, it does feel different. You used to be a dyad, and now there's a new person. And a very long time ago, like even before my time, there was a strange euphemism where we would say that people were expecting a little stranger. And it's kind of like that. You had this relationship that was based on partnership and two people really knowing each other and being together. And now you've introduced someone that you've never met before. And they become a very central part of the home life. And so understanding that not only might this not be like a smooth sailing time in the relationship, we actually don't really expect it to be. Like, there's empirical evidence that says it's not going to be, and that's okay. And it's also not permanent, right? They dip, but they don't stay in that nadir. They start to come back up. And I think helping people to see certainly this idea of like, you're not alone in this. You're not the first couple who has struggled after the birth of a child. And most of these things are transient. I don't know what it'll look like a year from now, but I can almost guarantee it won't look and feel the way it does today.
We have a program that we do about stress, and we try to explain to people that even joyous events can cause stress. So, Shamika, I was wondering, what are some good strategies for managing the stress of having a new baby at home?
Ooh, I love this question. Making sure you have a support system. And I know for some people, you may be thinking, I'm the first, or I don't have a solid family foundation, or maybe I don't have a solid support system. So, what does that look like? Sometimes it means including your birthing team as a part of your postpartum team. So, doulas, I know we've talked a lot about doulas as far as for a lot of us that were maybe new, we hear about doulas and birth plans. Well, doulas also are part of the postpartum plan. They're individuals who can help with some of the things that we've talked about. They are typically there, especially if you have the same doula from birth to postpartum. They're able to see some of those changes. Someone you've built a relationship with, so they can, gently, but also in a, an affirming manner, say, "These are some of the things that I see. Can we talk about how you feel? Is what I'm seeing what's happening, or is this an emotional change, or is this something where you feel something's happening beyond your control?" So, for instance, are you nervous? Is this a lack of maybe just like, oh, this is a new baby that didn't come with a manual, or is this like my whole life just got turned upside down and I feel like I need like some help for me to even be able to show up for myself, let alone this new being. Um, Making sure that you're seeing your physicians. So, for instance, if you are seeing a specialist prior to birth, it does not stop once you have the baby. That must continue, not only for your health, but also for the health of the family as well. Going to your baby sees a doctor, what is it, like 2 days or like 2 weeks after birth, and so forth and so forth. making sure that you as well are checking in with your OB. Um, there are numerous things that can happen as a part of postpartum. Uh, and so being able to speak with the PCP, your OB, or someone who's not only able to hear about some of the things that we're talking about and maybe offer suggestions or other resources that a therapist cannot offer you, but maybe a psychiatrist or someone who prescribes medicine can offer, but also individuals who are able to actually do like routine blood work and check your hormones. Because something else that happens is, especially with postpartum depression, sometimes it's truly about the hormones connected to birth. And so sometimes postpartum depression does not mean you're going to have lifelong depression. It means you need assistance in that moment because your body is in need of something. And even as a therapist and a doula, I tell clients that's one of the first questions I ask before we go into this diagnosis or what this may be is, have you talked to your doctor? Like, is your doctor aware of some of these really big emotional changes that you're having? Because I think it's really important to have a collaborative care team and recognize that our body functions as one. It's not mental health or physical health. It's very much both. And they really do play a role in that support on that support team should also be someone who does focus on physical health. Not saying you got to go get a personal trainer, but are you and your partner maybe taking walks? How often are you getting outside? Like these things are very important. Um, you'll be surprised what fresh air will do. You'll be surprised what just having someone to support you to get up and move around can do. But also even for your baby, they're learning and growing and seeing a new environment is important for them, and it also helps with that bonding and attachment. Some other things that I would tell someone in the postpartum period would be um, don't be afraid to actually reach out to individuals who you may not have spoken to for a while. Because what I've heard from new parents often is, I didn't realize my friends that were new parents, like they didn't just stop communicating, they got really busy. And now I see that. So being able to reach out, and you might be surprised what relationships actually rekindle, but you can then learn from each other. Form play dates with those couples. You already are friends. Don't be afraid to ask, like, hey, even if your little ones aren't, on the developmental stage of sharing, you as parents are being able to share experiences and being able to connect, and the babies can just be present with each other. But it really is about connection for you and making sure that you're not cutting yourself off from the world, and recognizing that you do indeed have a village. And sometimes it just takes a little extra on your part. Also, I think identifying who your safe people are prior to birth. And what I mean by that is I often make an emotional emergency contact sheet with my clients. So we often talk about when babysitters come over, if you ever watched a 90s movie, there was always like there's always this thing when they get ready to leave, you can find the emergency contacts on the fridge. My mom's number there, my dad, like there's a list of people. We should have that when it comes to our emotional well-being. So during my postpartum period, who do I contact when I'm feeling certain things? Because there might be certain people that can show up for us in different ways. Maybe if I'm feeling alone, I reach out to someone who I know is not only going to hold me accountable for actually showing up, but also going to come over if they need to, if I don't respond to that text message. Also, being able and aware to know who is the person maybe on this list that is really connected within the community. So when I'm at a place and I'm ready, or even if I'm not ready, but I need to be actually leaving the house, they can point me in directions of places that are going to match where I am now in this stage of life. So other mom groups, maybe fitness groups where babies are welcome or that have childcare. These may be the people that help me navigate things, such as finding childcare, because it is expensive and those wait lists are long. And that is something that could also lead to, depression and other things. So someone that can be like, I know these may be hurdles because they may have been hurdles for me. So let me help you kind of form little bridges, or at least get around the pothole. And last but not least, because Wendy, I'm sure you have some things to add to that too. I think it's also knowing who not to contact. We don't talk about that a lot. if you're already not feeling your best, you don't want to reach out to someone who's just going to make it worse. And I think sometimes we know who those people are, but because we've identified them as someone who's supposed to be our support, we still do it in hopes that having a baby will change how they respond to us. And that's not always the case. So I would say wait till you're in a place where you can navigate without assistance if needed, their response to what it is you need before reaching out to them. So they wouldn't be on your emotional emergency contact list. They would be on the do not contact list, maybe till after I've spoken with my therapist or had my support group in place, so that if that doesn't go the way I need it to go, I know who to go to next to actually help recover from that and still get what I initially needed.
Thank you for all that. Is it realistic, Wendy, for someone to think that, you know, their self-care routine that they had pre-baby could continue?
So I find self-care to be sort of a dicey term because it's been co-opted and used to mean some things that I don't think it was initially intended to mean. So like not in an Instagram-y way, no. I don't think that is realistic. It's not going to be the sort of curated self-care that gets touted on the internet. But I think there are ways to integrate pre-existing approaches to self-care as well as finding some new ones. You may not be able to sit and watch a whole movie when you're the parent of a screaming newborn, but you might be able to get through a 30-minute comedy and laugh a little bit, like if you're someone who enjoys cinema and screens. So there are ways to adapt what previously worked. It's a great opportunity to cull what maybe hasn't been serving you as well. So I think the answer is I believe there's room for self-care, and even some of the elements of self-care that were important to someone pre-baby. I would not expect it to look the way it did before someone became a parent.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, when we talk about self-care in FFDA, we're definitely talking about a whole spectrum of activities that you do on purpose, you know, intentionally, that in some way nourish you. Mm-hmm. And so, you know, maybe it's, you know, writing in your gratitude journal, maybe it's taking a walk, maybe it's dancing, you know, like there's a whole range of activities that people can have, and not everything is the right activity for any given moment. So I think there was a comment that having the contact list, the emotional support contact list ahead of time would be really helpful. But I think another thing that could be helpful is, you know, if you have, you know, stress management strategies that work for you, make a list, put it on the fridge, and then you can be like, oh, maybe that would be a good one right now. So Shamika touched on this a little bit, but how does postpartum depression potentially affect the bonding process between a mother and her newborn? Wendy, is that something?
Yeah, so I see that like a variety of flavors of this in my practice. And it's not, sometimes there's the perception that bonding has been inhibited because because a parent is feeling a certain way internally. And that's actually when I really enjoy being able to see a new parent with their newborn or infant during session, because sometimes their perception of their interactions with their child are, because I'm feeling distressed, I must not be connecting. And it can be a wonderful opportunity to observe these parents with their baby and say, you know, you make amazing eye contact. You know, I love the way that you speak to them. I noticed that as soon as your baby started to fuss, you changed the position and started bouncing them without even noticing. So there's that flavor that sometimes a parent will have a fear that bonding has been inhibited because they're experiencing emotional distress. I will say that many of the parents that I see the connection with the baby is often the last thing to go. Like they will sacrifice their well-being and their needs in pretty much every other way in service of facilitating this bond and this attachment. I do see people periodically who are feeling like, I'm not feeling good, and this might have been a huge mistake. Like it would be really so much easier to feel sad and crappy, if there wasn't also a newborn here. And for those parents, I kind of like to validate and normalize that. Like, yeah, what you said is true. It's much easier when you're not feeling good to crawl under the covers alone and not deal with someone. And when you have a newborn here, you have someone who requires you to deal with them constantly. And that's exhausting. And so just saying like, yeah, it is hard. And it's okay that sometimes you're like, ugh, you again? Like, and that doesn't necessarily mean that you don't love this baby, right? You don't love that they're crying. You don't love that you're up for the 5th time tonight, like, but you love the person. And so knowing that some of these feelings of like, I'd rather not be doing this are not tantamount to not having bonded with your baby, that these are actually things that we can hold space for at the same time.
I think it's a legitimate fear for someone whose mind is racing with hormones and new experiences and no sleep and all of that. So it's, I think that it's great that, actually Rose said, what'd she say? Sometimes validation that we're doing okay as parents is powerful. And I think that that's very well put. Shamika, are you ready for us to go on to the next?
Before we do, I want to say that I love that Wendy stated that, because I think no matter the role I'm showing up in, whether it's as a professional for a client or as a friend or even a sister, validation can take you a long ways. And sometimes I think we are wrapped in, if I validate, does that mean that I agree? And it's not about your belief at that time. It is about making the connection with the person that is indeed possibly in pain, and making sure that they can hear you, know that you are there to support them. And also, when you're not validating or saying that what I feel is okay, that is often when we get to the point of wondering, well, am I fit to do this? And so being able to validate someone and let them know this is hard. And if you share, like not making it about you, but like, I remember that time it was hard. How can I show up? Or I remember that time it was hard, but trust me, you're doing great. And sometimes it's even people saying, if you would have saw me, trust me, you're doing great. Just being able to, for lack of better words, hype them up. Like it's a time where they need a cheerleader. They need to know that they are going to be okay, even if they do not feel okay in that moment. And also, as Wendy stated earlier, this is a temporary time. Your baby's not going to be a newborn forever. They're not going to be an infant forever. And sleep regression and other things come in cycles. So like, it's a focus on the present type deal. Like we just need to get through this moment because better days are coming.
And I did want to just say, Valerie wrote, she has people who can commiserate with her when parenthood is hard, and friends that she knows through hobbies that she can call when she wants to tap into another version of myself. I think that that's just right on the money. So well said. So Shamika, while I have you on the line, what are ways that, generally speaking, partners can best support the new mothers in their lives?
Sure. Remembering that you are important, and even if you are not connecting with your partner at the level or amount at which you did before baby, it does not mean you don't matter. There's just a little one who, also is, sharing the love. Not only that, but that, especially if your partner's breastfeeding, or if your partner may be seeming to be we'll say, the go-to parent at this time, what are ways that you can show up? If she's breastfeeding, can you read a book? We talked about self-care and it looks different. Are they eating? Like, can you meal prep and make sure they're meal set so that they know all you have to do is heat this food up? Or if you're present, going to get the snacks. I just had a conversation with a friend, and we were talking about, having basically like a mini charcuterie board, because I was like, nuts, cheeses, like these are things they help with, milk production. And they were like, oh, the whole time they were pregnant, they couldn't have this. I'll just create a little board. Like they got all into it. And I was like, yep, exactly. No wine, but all the other all the other things, and maybe their favorite juice. Bath time. Can you help with that? It can also be a time for the two of you to, like, you and your partner to connect, but also to create bonding with the infant. If there are other children, you could assist with that. And I don't want to dismiss the fact that we now know something that we always knew, that, our male partners and partners, the individual that did not have a baby, also can have depression. So also not overlooking what you're feeling, because your emotions, your well-being also impact mom, partner, and baby. So being able to also be able to say if you need help, and even seeing you in your vulnerable state can help your partner say what they actually need. Um, and if I were just to add anything else in there, we love good dad jokes. I mean, after hearing a screaming baby, being able to laugh at something that, in the moment you wouldn't have even thought of, you is Wendy stated it, like laughter helps. Not only that, when you've been feeling other things, joy in any form is very much welcome. And I think making sure that you continue to remember the love you have for your partner. So saying things such as "I love you," reminding them how beautiful they are, words of affirmation, maybe it's writing notes. I know a partner that literally would make the meals and leave them in the refrigerator and put the sticky notes like you see on the commercials, where they write the sticky note and stick it in the lunchbox. If they're getting ready to go back to work and they're breastfeeding, be the one to help pack their pump bag. Put the baby pictures in there. If we're encouraging them to leave the home and they're leaving you with baby, yes, you are the other parent, but still send those pictures every now and then. Like, take pictures of you and the baby, playing on the rug, or you and the baby watching their favorite show. Like, these are things that not only remind them why they fell in love with you, but just help them feel more secure and comfortable and continuing to do the things that they need to do, and to actually start to do things that they haven't done since the baby was born.
I was reminded of a time when um, a man that I know lamented that he had to do babysitting on a particular night. And I said, those are your kids. That's not babysitting, that's parenting. It was like, oh. So sometimes little reminders can help in that way too, from the outside. Wendy, you can either add on to that, or I want to just pick up on a thread that Shamika was starting on with breastfeeding. So your choice.
So I'll say something quickly and then we can segue into breastfeeding. Yes, Susan, I've heard similar things, and I speak to like primary caregivers all the time who are like, oh, I need to ask my partner for this favor. I'm like, oh, they're not doing you a favor. Like, they're doing their portion of the caregiving. And as far as support from partners, I see couples who they get stuck trying to figure out the empathy aspect of it, because they might, like, your partner might not understand why you feel the way you feel. And so it's okay to bypass that for now. Like, your partner doesn't have to get why this is the way it is. And you can go to compassion, which is something more like, I don't know why you feel this way. I understand that you feel this way, and I know that it sucks for you. Like, what can I do to just be here with you in a way that feels good to you right now?
That makes sense. So new moms often go into motherhood with, this about I'm going to breastfeed my baby and it's going to be idyllic and, whatever, all that. But it doesn't always work out as planned. There are just so many potential obstacles that arise. So how can that whole experience affect a woman's mental health, and how can people provide support for her?
So I have never encountered anyone who has a neutral relationship with the idea of breastfeeding or chest feeding. So just starting from like the point of understanding that this is a highly emotionally charged issue for most people. And oftentimes, as you were saying, there are people who have like long harbored fantasies about this is what it's going to be like. And so if for whatever reason it's not going the way a parent wanted it to go, I think, first of all, again, I'm just a huge validator, acknowledging that this is a struggle for them. If they are going to give up breastfeeding or chest feeding, and that's something that they truly wanted to do, that this is a loss and that they're allowed to grieve that. And so in that way, I sort of have a love-hate relationship with the expression fed is best. Everyone knows that already. They don't want to not feed their babies. What they're really struggling with is the grief over things not going the way they expected, and the loss of this fantasy of this is what it's going to be like when I cradle my newborn or my infant. And we have this magical, like cocooned bonding experience. So before doing anything else, I think just meeting them where they are, which is this is not going the way you wanted, and that feels terrible. And so not really trying to change the narrative around that, like there are so many good formulas or you can do X, Y, and Z. And then when the parent is ready, starting to look at, there are aspects of the breastfeeding that you can carry into this new feeding relationship with your child. Right? So just because there might be a bottle involved, that doesn't mean that you can't make sustained eye contact with your baby or cuddle them or talk to them. And actually, I have worked with people who have said, when I was finally able to acknowledge that breastfeeding was not going to work for me, it was just not going to be part of my, prolonged journey, I was actually better able to connect with my baby, because when I was highly stressed during these nursing sessions, there was none of that nice bonding that was going on. And removing that gives them the opportunity to be more attuned to their baby and to really connect in a very meaningful way. Not everyone's going to be ready to hear and acknowledge that. And so I think it's a balance of saying like, yes, this feels really, really crummy to you. And you are going to be able to pull some of the wonderful aspects of breastfeeding into your relationship with your baby, even when breastfeeding is not part of the picture.
Wendy, is that something that people want to hear from like their partner or their relatives, or is it something that they want to hear from a medical professional or a maternal mental health kind of professional?
Yeah, that's a good question. And it's really going to be highly subjective. So I'm not going to presume to know what would work for everyone. And I think that regardless of who is providing the support, tone is key, right? Like I can say, I know this is really important to you. And I can also say those same words and be like, yeah, okay, I know this is really important to you, but, and it obviously conveys a very different meaning. And so I think it's really any person can be the right person to share the message if they're willing to do it in a thoughtful, compassionate way.
Thank you. Shamika, anything you want to add on the breastfeeding mental health?
I think to add to what Wendy's saying, if you are one of the individuals that is in the support circle or friend, family member, remembering that we don't speak on other people's life experiences. So it is not my job at any point if something were to change to say, but you said, or I thought we were, we not doing that. That's not helpful. That is not needed. And depending on where we are with boundaries, that is a way to make sure you are blocked for the next couple of months. Just if I'm their therapist, that is definitely one of the things we talk about. Who do we need to separate ourselves from for just a little while we're going through this transition? Um, Also, when we are validating or supporting in that moment, it could look like just asking, how do I hold you accountable? And accountability in the breastfeeding journey may not mean holding you accountable for feeding. It could mean, do you need me to call you, to talk to you as while you're on the weaning process or while you're pumping because you need someone to talk through some of what you're feeling about even having to use a pump right now. It could also mean, okay, you really have told me or expressed to me for the next couple of months, this is what we're going to do. So I'm Googling or, talking to breastfeeding educationist or nutritionist about, is there like a granola bar or like, how can I show up? Like, what can I get to send over? Um, if they're trying to maybe transition as well, like, well, can I send some cabbages, to help dry out their breasts? Like, just showing that you're supportive of whatever journey that they have to take, as well as showing that you're truly interested. And what I found in those times, individuals that show that they are along for the journey and supportive from the beginning are often the ones that often hear when things change because that person feels comfortable enough with you to tell you, hey, I know you're looking up this stuff and it's just as excited as I am, but this is hard. Or to let I think latching there may, like, what have you read about that? Can you tell me? Because maybe you read something I didn't read because this isn't going the way the books told me. Or asking you for the different resources because you've shown that you can help with that. Because sometimes you're just tired, as we've talked about this whole time. So having to do one more thing is just a lot. But once again, as Wendy also stated, it's okay for your plan not to go as planned. I think we just have to sit with the person in their discomfort and their grieving as they are like coming to the point of not accepting, but also acknowledging their new normal. So sometimes we hear acceptance and we think it means those rainbows and flowers. And sometimes it's not so much acceptance as it is acknowledging this is what life is going like, this is what this journey is going to look like.
All right. Well, we wanted to also talk about actions that people outside of that relationship, the new parent relationship, how they can be supportive. But one of the questions that came in is, how can I provide support if the new parents won't let people over? So in the context of answering about what we can do for families that we know are dealing with postpartum, here's a little wrinkle and how can we help with that?
I think I've touched on it some throughout, as we've been talking, but in thanks to social media, I think being able to ask what it is that they may need, if you have their address, being able to send, like I said, food, or maybe you're sending over a care package. Wendy stated, this is giving birth is traumatic, whether it's big T, little t's, up to the person who's experiencing it, but your body's going through a big change. And then in terms of your family unit, it's a stage of life change. So we give care packages for lots of things. So being able to put together a care package that shows that you're present, and when they are ready for guests, because it's a lot happening right now in the world, and terms of sickness and other things. So sometimes individuals are not only trying to protect their child from that, but also understanding that sometimes, like we're saying, this is navigating a change. If I'm navigating, my family unit in size changing, sometimes I need to be able to see just my family unit to mentally be able to acknowledge and accept, okay, this is what it is. And for some individuals, and I've worked with some individuals where it's like, if we invite or let people over, is not always, but this acknowledgement of how soon am I going to learn to do certain things on my own, or acknowledge that like this is what the schedule looks like in my house because of all the different changes that are happening. So I think understanding, letting them know like, hey, I know right now you all aren't accepting visitors, but even asking, because you're not accepting visitors, how should my support look? Because I want you to know that I am here, and I want to help however possible. And if I were to add any other thing to that, I don't, depending on if this person is creating a plan for postpartum, or even if they've already had the baby and it's months later, if there are friends that you are connected to, and if you know any of the family members, creating a meal plan, a meal train. It's something you can do online. People can sign up, and it literally can keep meals going for months, depending on how many of you are on it. And I know for a lot of individuals, coworkers, colleagues, and clients, those meal trains are something that you hear a lot about for forever. I mean, diapers and clothing babies outgrow, but food is something that we all need.
Thank you. Wendy, I was just wondering, is there any difference between the kind of support you would give to a household with a new baby, just in the ordinary course of things, versus one that we know is dealing with postpartum depression?
So I don't know that I would necessarily offer different kinds of support. I think there are things that tend to universally feel good, like knowing that you're not alone. Even if you don't want to let me into your house today, you're not alone. I mean, one thing that I say to my own kids when they have like a boo-boo and I'm like, oh, let me hug you. And they're like, no, don't touch me. I'm really upset. Is, okay, I'm going to hold on to the hug for when you're ready for it. And so, if you are dealing with someone who's resistant at the time because they're really just feeling lousy to inviting you in, letting them know there's no expiration date on this offer. If it's next week that you want to visit, that's fine. If it's 3 months and then you want to go out to dinner, like whatever works for you, know that I'm here. And also, you don't have to feel good to see me. If you want me to just sit there while you feel lousy, I'll sit there. That's fine. And to the poster's question about what to do when folks won't let you in, I think we're actually in a unique time in that way, because everyone who gave birth during the last 4-year chunk really experienced that, not necessarily because they didn't want community or to invite people in, but because more than I think ever in our lifetimes, people were really afraid to let people in. And so looking around and talking to people and just saying, hey, what did you do when your friends had COVID era deliveries, and maybe borrowing some good ideas from there.
All right. Well, thank you so much. You guys gave such good answers. And I think that we've gotten to the questions that we needed to in the comments, because you guys were great at addressing them as we went along. So thank you so much. Very grateful for you all sharing your time and for the work that you do. And of course, I'm very grateful to the people who have joined us and those who watch later on. If you would please, and you are a viewer, oh, I already missed that part, but If you want to scan that QR code and answer our survey, we'd really, really appreciate it. Again, you guys really help us make programming that meets your needs. If you want to go and type in, it's bit.ly/new parents panel survey. So thank you. We would very much appreciate hearing from you. And I just want to thank you all for coming, and thank you to everyone for participating, and hope you all have a good evening. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you.